Dr. Kim Tae-ho rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the clock on his computer screen. 3 in the morning. The coffee in his cup had gone cold hours ago, but he kept drinking it anyway. Around him, the deep space monitoring station hummed quietly. Most of his colleagues had gone to sleep, leaving only the night shift crew to watch the endless dark of space. Tae-ho had been working at Station Omega 7 for 6 years now. The station orbited Earth's moon, far enough from the planet to avoid interference but close enough to send messages quickly. His job was simple but important: listen to space and try to understand what he heard. Most nights he heard nothing but cosmic noise. Radio waves from dying stars, the whisper of solar winds, the background hum of the universe itself. Tonight felt different. He had been tracking a strange signal for the past 2 hours. At first he thought it was just another piece of space junk sending out random radio noise. Old satellites did that sometimes? But this signal had patterns. It repeated certain sequences, changed in ways that seemed too organized to be random. Tae-ho put on his headphones and listened again. The signal was weak, barely stronger than the background noise. But there was something about it that made his skin crawl. It sounded desperate. "Park So-min," he called out to the communications officer at the next station. "Can you come look at this?" So-min rolled her chair over to his desk. She had been in the military before joining the space program, and she knew radio signals better than anyone on the station. Her short black hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and her uniform was still crisp even after working all night. "What do you have?" she asked. Tae-ho played the signal for her. She listened with her eyes closed, the way she always did when she was concentrating. After a few minutes, she opened her eyes and looked at him with a serious expression. That's not random," she said. "Play it again." They listened to the signal 5 more times. Each time, So-min took notes on a piece of paper. She drew diagrams and wrote down numbers. Finally, she put down her pen and stared at the papers. "Tae-ho," she said quietly, "I think this is a language." His heart started beating faster. "R. You sure? Look at these patterns," she said, pointing to her notes. The signal repeats certain groups of sounds, but with small changes each time. It's like someone is trying to say the same thing in different ways, hoping someone will understand. Tae-ho felt excitement and fear at the same time. For 50 years, humans had been listening to space, hoping to hear from other intelligent life. There had been false alarms before. Radio signals that seemed artificial but turned out to be natural phenomena. This felt different. "We need to record everything," he said. "And we need to try to figure out where it's coming from." For the next hour, they worked together. So-min tracked the signal's direction while Tae-ho recorded every second of transmission. The signal was coming from a point in space about 47 light-years away from Earth. That was impossibly far, but the signal was definitely coming. From that direction. As they worked, Tae-ho began to notice something that made his blood run cold. Mixed in with what seemed like language were mathematical sequences. Simple ones at first, counting numbers, basic geometric shapes, but then more complex patterns. And scattered throughout the mathematical sections were sounds that could only be described as emotional. They sounded like crying. "So-min," Tae-ho said, his voice shaking slightly, "I think someone is asking for help." She looked up from her instruments. "What do you mean?" "Listen to this part," he said, playing a section of the recording. "These mathematical patterns, they're not random. They're coordinates, star positions. And these other sounds, double quotes," he paused. "They sound like distress calls." So-min listened again, and her face went pale. "Oh God," she whispered, "you're right." They worked faster now, driven by the terrible possibility that somewhere in the dark between the stars, someone was dying and calling for help. Tae-ho's specialty was languages, both human and theoretical alien ones. He had spent years studying how different species might try to communicate with each other. As he analyzed the signal, patterns began to emerge. The mathematical sections were clearly meant to establish intelligence and provide information. The coordinates pointed to a star system that Earth's telescopes had cataloged but never studied in detail. But it was the emotional sections that convinced him this was real. "No computer makes sounds like this," he told So-min. This is a living being trying to communicate across impossible distances. By 5 in the morning, they had decoded enough of the signal to understand its basic structure. The sender identified themselves with a complex sound pattern that might be a species name. Tejo wrote it down phonetically as Veltari. The coordinates were definitely pointing to their home star system. And woven throughout the message were desperate pleas for assistance, but there was something else, something that made both of them feel sick with fear. "Look at this section," Somin said, pointing to a part of the recording. "These sound patterns keep repeating, and they're associated with mathematical sequences that look like countdown timers." Tejo studied the patterns. His face went white. "It's not just a distress call," he said. "Someone is hunting them." The signal contained references to other beings described with harsh, mechanical sound patterns that felt cold and threatening. The Veltari seemed to be describing attackers who were systematic and ruthless. And according to the mathematical sequences, these attackers were winning. "We have to report this," Somin said, "right now." Tejo nodded and reached for the emergency communication button. This would wake up everyone from the station commander to officials back on Earth, but they had no choice. If this signal was real, if there really was an intelligent species being hunted to extinction 47 light-years from Earth, then humanity needed to know about it immediately. As his finger hovered over the button, Tejo thought about what this meant. Earth had always wondered if there was other intelligent life in the universe. They had hoped that first contact would be peaceful, maybe even friendly. They had never imagined that their first message from another species would be a cry for help from beings facing genocide. He pressed the button. Warning lights began flashing throughout the station. In minutes, the night shift supervisor was running toward their station. Behind him came other technicians and officers, all looking confused and worried. "What's the emergency?" demanded Commander Yun. The station's senior officer, Tejo and Somin explained what they had found. They played sections of the signal and showed their analysis. As they talked, Commander Yun's expression changed from skepticism to amazement to horror. "Are you certain this is artificial?" he asked. "Yes, sir," Somin replied. "This is definitely an intelligent signal. And according to our analysis, whoever sent it is in serious trouble." Commander Yun stared at the data for a long moment. Then he picked up his secure communication device and started making calls. Within minutes, he was talking directly to officials at Earth Defense Command. As dawn broke over the lunar horizon, Tejo realized that everything had changed. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, but their first contact with alien intelligence was not going to be the peaceful meeting that everyone had hoped for. Somewhere in the darkness between the stars, an entire species was crying out for help, and somehow their desperate message had reached Earth. The question now was, what would humanity do about it? Admiral Li Yun stood in the war room deep beneath Geneva, staring at the holographic display showing the decoded alien message. The room was carved from solid rock, built to survive anything from nuclear war to asteroid impacts. Right now, it felt like both might be necessary. Around the circular table sat the most powerful people on Earth. President Choi Min-ho looked tired but determined. General Park Dong-woo from the Space Defense Force was already reviewing deployment options. Dr. Yoon Jae-sung, the lead scientist for humanity's most secret military project, was frantically calculating distances and payload requirements. It had been 18 hours since the signal was first detected. 18 hours since humanity learned they were not alone in the universe. And 18 hours since they discovered that somewhere in the darkness, an entire species was being wiped out. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly, President," Choi said, his voice calm despite the magnitude of what they were discussing. "An alien species called the Veltari sent us a distress signal. They are 47 light-years away from Earth, and they are being systematically exterminated by another alien race." "That's correct, sir," Admiral Lee replied. "Our linguists have decoded enough of the message to confirm these basic facts. The attackers are called something that translates roughly to the harvesters, according to the signal. They don't just kill the Veltari, they harvest them. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. Dr. Yun cleared his throat. Mr. President, there's something else. Our deep space telescopes have been monitoring the Veltari star system since we received the signal. We've detected massive energy signatures consistent with orbital bombardment, and, sir, he paused, the signals from the Veltari homeworld are getting weaker. President Choi closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, his expression was hard as steel. How long do they have? Based on the degradation of their transmissions, maybe days. Maybe hours. Admiral Lee had seen combat in 3 different wars. She had made decisions that cost thousands of lives, and she had learned to live with those choices. But the idea of an entire species being murdered while Earth watched helplessly made her feel sick. Sir, she said, we have to discuss our options. What options? General Park asked bitterly. They're 47 light-years away. Our fastest ships would take centuries to reach them, even if we launched them today. Actually, Dr. Yun said, quietly, we do have options, but they single quotes extreme. Every head in the room turned toward him. Dr. Yun was a small, nervous man who spent most of his time working on theoretical physics. He was not the kind of person who usually spoke up in war councils. Explain, Admiral Lee ordered. Dr. Yun pulled up a new holographic display. It showed technical diagrams that most people in the room couldn't understand, but Admiral Lee recognized them immediately. Her heart started beating faster. Project Heimdall, Dr. Yun said. We've been developing it for 15 years, ever. Since the first theoretical breakthroughs in faster-than-light travel. The technology isn't ready for human passengers, but we can send unmanned payloads across interstellar distances. President Choi leaned forward. What kind of payloads? Missiles, Admiral Lee answered. Nuclear missiles. Antimatter warheads. Kinetic impactors. Anything we want to deliver to another star system. The room was silent for a long moment as everyone processed this information. Finally, General Park spoke. Are you suggesting we attack the aliens who are killing the Veltari? I'm suggesting we defend the Veltari by eliminating their attackers, Admiral Lee replied. There's a difference. Doctor? Yun called up more technical data. According to the Veltari signal, the harvesters are using orbital platforms to bombard the planet's surface. Their ships are concentrated in specific areas around the Veltari homeworld. If we could target those locations with precision strikes. How? Many missiles are we talking about? President Choi asked. For maximum effectiveness, we'd need to launch everything we have, Admiral Lee said. Every Heimdall missile in our arsenal. Every nuclear warhead we can fit with FTL drives. This wouldn't be a limited strike. This would be total warfare. The implications hung in the air like smoke. Earth had built Project Heimdall as a deterrent. A way to threaten any potential alien invaders with instant retaliation from across the galaxy? They had never intended to actually use it. General Park looked troubled. We don't know anything about these harvesters. What if they're more advanced than us? What if our attack just makes them angry? Then they'll learn what happens when you make Earth angry, Admiral Lee replied coldly. Sir, we have to consider the strategic implications. If the harvesters are willing to exterminate the Veltari, what happens when they discover Earth? Do we wait for them to show up in our solar system and send us a surrender demand? President Choi stood up and walked to the holographic display showing the Veltari star system. He stared at it for a long time, his hands clasped behind his back. Dr. Yun, he said finally, what are the chances of success? The FTL missiles will definitely reach their target, sir. Our calculations show a 97% probability of successful delivery. The question is whether our warheads will be effective against alien technology. And if they're not effective? Dr. Yun looked uncomfortable. Then we'll have revealed our capabilities to a hostile alien species and we'll have no weapons left to defend Earth with. Admiral Lee stepped forward. Mr. President, may I speak freely? Go ahead. Sir, 47 light-years from here, an entire species is being murdered. Their children are dying, their civilization is being erased. And they sent us a message asking for help. She paused. What kind of species are we if we receive that message and do nothing? The room was quiet except for the hum of computers. And air circulation systems? Everyone was thinking about the same thing. Somewhere in the darkness, people were dying. Not humans, but people nonetheless. Intelligent beings with families and dreams and hopes for the future. President Choi turned around to face the group. There's something else we need to consider. If we do this, if we actually launch an interstellar attack against the Harvesters, we'll be announcing to the entire galaxy that Earth is a military power. Every alien species out there will know that humans are willing and able to project force across dozens of light years. Is that necessarily a bad thing? Admiral Lee asked. It depends on how many other hostile species are out there, General Park replied. We could be painting a target on Earth. Dr. Yoon cleared his throat again. Actually, sir, according to the Veltari transmissions, Earth may already be on the Harvester's target list. Some of their mathematical sequences appear to be star charts. And one of the stars they've marked. He highlighted a point on the display. That's our sun. The room erupted in angry voices. Everyone started talking at once, demanding more information, asking questions, making suggestions. President Choi held up his hand for silence. How certain are you about this? He asked Dr. Yoon. 70% certain, sir. The mathematical notation is complex, but the pattern suggests they're cataloging star systems with habitable planets. Earth appears to be on their list. Admiral Lee felt a cold fury building in her chest. It was the same feeling she had experienced during her first combat mission when enemy forces had attacked a refugee convoy. The difference was that this time, the refugees were an entire species, and the enemy was somewhere among the stars. Mr. President, she said, her voice deadly calm, recommendation. President Choi looked around the room at his advisors, his generals, his scientists. These were good people, trying to make an impossible decision under unimaginable circumstances. We launch everything, he said quietly. Every missile, every warhead, every kinetic impactor we can get FTL drives attached to. We show these harvesters what happens when they threaten innocent people. Admiral Lee smiled for the first time in hours. It was not a pleasant smile. Yes, sir? How long do we have to prepare? Dr. Yoon? If we start immediately and work around the clock, we can have the first missiles ready to launch in 36 hours. Then we start immediately, President Choi said, and may God help us all. Zafara pressed her forefingered hand against the cold metal wall of the refugee ship and tried not to think about how many of her people had died in the past week. The ship shook again as another explosion lit up the darkness outside. Through the small window, she could see the burning remains of her homeworld's defense fleet drifting in space. Like dying stars, the Veltari had been a peaceful species for over 3,000 years. They built beautiful cities that floated in their planet's vast oceans. They created art and music that could make listeners weep with joy. They explored space not to conquer, but to learn and to meet other intelligent beings who might become friends. That peaceful nature had made them easy targets for the Kethrion collective. Zafara was the last remaining commander of the Veltari Defense Force, though there was very little left to defend. Most of her world's population was already dead. The survivors were packed into a few dozen ships, fleeing through space while the collective's harvester machines stripped their planet bare. Commander, said her aide, a young male named Keflon, whose blue-scaled skin had turned pale with exhaustion. The collective ships are moving into position for the final bombardment. Through the window, Zafara could see them, massive black ships shaped like geometric spiders, each one larger than the biggest city on her homeworld. They moved with mechanical precision, positioning themselves around the planet to ensure that nothing would survive what came next. The Kethrion collective was not like any enemy the Veltari had ever imagined. They were not a species in the traditional sense, but rather a fusion of biological and artificial intelligence that had consumed dozens of worlds across this region of the galaxy. They did not want territory or resources in the way most conquerors did. They wanted everything. Every living creature, every piece of organic matter, every drop of genetic material. They harvested entire species, breaking them down into their component parts and incorporating the useful pieces into their own collective consciousness. What they could not use, they simply destroyed? How long until they finish? Zephyra asked. Keflin consulted his instruments. Based on their previous harvesting operations, perhaps 6 hours for complete planetary sterilization. 6 hours. In 6 hours, the world that had been home to her people for 50,000 years would be nothing but molten rock and poisoned atmosphere. The forests where her ancestors had built their first settlements would be ash. The deep oceans where her people had learned to swim before they learned to walk would be boiling lakes of toxic chemicals. And our message? She asked. The distress signal we sent to the star catalogs? Keflin's expression grew even more hopeless. Still transmitting on all frequencies, Commander, but we have received no responses. Zephyra was not surprised. The message had been a desperate gamble from the beginning. When it became clear that the Veltari could not defeat the Collective, the Planetary Council had decided to broadcast a distress signal to every star system their deep space probes had ever catalogued. The message contained their location, their situation, and a plea for help from any intelligent species that might receive it. They had sent the signal to over 200 star systems. Most contained no signs of intelligent life. A few showed primitive civilizations that had barely discovered fire, much less space travel. Only a handful seemed to have advanced technology, and even those were too far away to provide help in time. There was one signal that had puzzled their scientists. It came from a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star about 47 light-years away. Their probes had detected artificial radio signals from that world, suggesting an intelligent species. But the signals were chaotic and primitive, nothing like the organized communications of an advanced civilization. The planet's inhabitants called themselves humans. According to the probe data, they seemed to spend most of their time fighting each other over resources and territory. Their technology was crude compared to Veltari standards. Though they had achieved basic spaceflight and nuclear power, what had made the Veltari scientists nervous was not the humans' primitive technology, but their violent nature. Every radio signal from their world seemed to be about war, conflict, or competition. They had weapons capable of destroying their own planet multiple times over. Their entertainment media was filled with stories about violence and conquest. The probe reports had classified the human homeworld as a deathworld, a planet where life was so dangerous and competitive that any species evolving there would be naturally aggressive and militaristic. The Veltari had decided not to make contact with such a species, fearing that humans might be almost as dangerous as the Collective, but desperate times called for desperate measures. The distress signal had been sent to the human world along with all the others, though no one expected a response from such a primitive and violent species. "Commander," another voice called from across the bridge. "The Collective is hailing us." Zephyra felt her stomach turn cold. "Put them through." The main screen flickered, and suddenly she was looking at the face of Collective Prime Node 7. It was a horrifying mixture of organic and mechanical parts. Gleaming metal merged with what had once been living tissue, creating something that was neither fully alive nor fully machine. Red optical sensors glowed where eyes should have been. "Veltari Commander," the thing said in a voice like grinding metal, "your species' resistance phase has concluded. You will surrender your vessels for processing, or they will be destroyed and processed afterward. The outcome remains identical." "We will never surrender to you," Zephyra replied, trying to keep the fear out of her voice. Emotional response predicted and irrelevant. Prime Node 7 responded. "Your species exhibits standard pre-processing behavior patterns: fear, anger, desperation. These emotions will be cataloged and stored before biological termination." The screen showed images from the planet's surface, massive mechanical harvesters moving across the landscape, gathering up everything organic and feeding it into processing centers. Trees, grass, animals, and any Veltari civilians who had not escaped. All of it was being consumed by the endless mechanical appetite of the collective. Your genetic pattern shows useful adaptations, the prime node continued. Aquatic capability, enhanced regeneration, superior mathematical processing. These traits will be preserved in the collective. Your individual consciousness will be terminated, but your species' useful characteristics will continue in our service. You're monsters, Zafara said. Incorrect. We are evolution's logical conclusion. Biological chaos replaced by mechanical order. Individual suffering replaced by collective efficiency. Your species will contribute to something greater than it could ever achieve alone. The transmission ended, leaving Zafara staring at a blank screen. Around her, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations, trying to prepare for the impossible task of evacuating the last few thousand Veltari before the planet was completely destroyed. "Commander," Keflin said softly, "should we stop transmitting the distress signal? It's using a lot of power, and no one is going to answer in time anyway." Zafara looked out at the collective ships positioning themselves for the final bombardment. She thought about the human world that had been marked as too dangerous to contact. She thought about all the other civilizations in the galaxy that might face the same fate as her people someday. "Keep transmitting," she said. "If we're going to die, at least someone should know what happened here. Someone should know that the collective exists, and that they're coming for everyone eventually." She did not mention the other reason she wanted to keep transmitting. Deep in the distress signal, hidden in the mathematical sequences, was data about the collective ships, their weapons, their tactics. If any species ever did receive the message, they would at least have some warning about what they were facing. Outside the window, the first harvester beam began burning through her planet's atmosphere. In a few hours, there would be nothing left of the Veltari except the data patterns stored in the collective's memory banks, but their message would keep traveling through space, carrying word of their extinction to the stars. Maybe someone, somewhere, would hear it and understand what it meant. Maybe someone would care enough to remember them. Captain Nam Hyun Woo watched the countdown timer on his control panel tick toward 0. Around him, the bridge of the UES Retribution was silent except for the soft hum of computers and life support systems. His crew of 12 had been training for this moment for 3 years, but none of them had ever imagined they would be humanity's first ambassadors to an alien species. Of course, they were not going to shake hands and exchange gifts. They were going to deliver the most devastating military strike in human history. 30 seconds to FTL jump, announced Navigation Officer Bae Soo-jin from her station. At only 24 years old, she was the youngest person ever selected for an interstellar mission. Her steady hands and quick mind had made her the best pilot in Earth's small fleet of FTL vessels. "All systems green," reported Weapons Officer Kim Jong-soo. "Payload is secure and ready for deployment." Captain Naum took a deep breath and opened the ship-wide communication channel. "This is the captain speaking. In 30 seconds, we will make humanity's first journey to another star system. We are not explorers or diplomats. We are soldiers carrying Earth's response to genocide. When we arrive at the Veltari homeworld, we will find alien ships killing innocent people. We will stop them. We will show the galaxy what happens when someone asks Earth for help." He closed the channel and gripped the arms of his command chair. Through the main viewport, he could see the other ships in their small fleet, 12 vessels in total, each one carrying enough firepower to level a continent. But their real weapon was not what they carried in their cargo holds. Their real weapon was what they represented: Earth's refusal to let evil go unpunished. 10 seconds, Soo-jin announced. "All crew, prepare for FTL transition," Nam ordered. The countdown reached 0, and reality twisted around them. For a moment that felt like forever, Captain Nam existed in the space between spaces. He could see colors that had no names and hear sounds that should not exist. The laws of physics bent and folded as the ship punched through the fabric of space-time itself, crossing 47 light-years in the span of a heartbeat. Then they were back in normal space, and the Veltari star system spread out before them. "Jesus Christ," whispered someone on the bridge. The system was a battlefield. Massive alien ships, dark as night and shaped like geometric nightmares, hung in orbit around a blue-green planet. Smaller vessels darted between them like insects, firing weapons that lit up the darkness with violent colors. Even from millions of kilometers away, they could see explosions blooming across the planet's surface. "Sensors are picking up massive energy signatures," reported Science Officer Lee Minyo. "Those big ships are bombarding the planet with some kind of particle beam weapons, and Captain ... She paused, her voice shaking slightly. "I'm detecting thousands of smaller ships trying to evacuate the planet. They're being hunted down and destroyed." Captain Nav felt a cold rage building in his chest. This was exactly what the distress signal had described: systematic genocide carried out with mechanical efficiency. Somewhere down on that burning planet, people were dying while their killers watched from orbit. "Sujin, take us in closer," he ordered. "I want a full tactical assessment of the enemy fleet." As they moved deeper into the system, the scale of the alien fleet became clear. There were over 50 of the large ships, each one several kilometers long. Hundreds of smaller vessels swarmed around them, chasing down the few remaining Valtari evacuation ships and destroying them one by one. "Captain," Jiangsu reported, "I'm reading the alien ship configurations. They're not built for ship-to-ship combat. These are harvesting vessels designed to strip a planet of all organic matter. Their weapons are meant for orbital bombardment? Not space battles." "Good," Nam replied grimly. "That makes our job easier." He opened a channel to the other ships in the Earth fleet. "All vessels, this is Retribution Actual. We have visual confirmation of the target. Enemy fleet consists of approximately 50 capital ships and 300 smaller vessels. They are currently engaged in planetary bombardment operations. All ships will proceed to attack Pattern Alpha, weapons free on my mark." The Earth ships spread out into attack formation. They were vastly outnumbered, but they had advantages the aliens could not imagine. Human military doctrine was based on swift, overwhelming violence. When humans went to war, they did not aim to defeat their enemies. They aimed to utterly destroy them. "Captain," Minyun called out, "I'm picking up transmissions from the planet. It's the same signal we received on Earth, but much stronger. The Valtari are still alive down there." "Then we'd better hurry," Nam replied. "All ships, commence attack. Show them what Earth thinks of bullies." The first salvo was a flight of antimatter missiles, each one capable of vaporizing a city. They streaked across space at nearly the speed of light, too fast for the alien ships to detect until it was too late. The missiles struck 3 of the largest harvester ships simultaneously. The explosions were visible from the planet's surface. 3 miniature suns bloomed in orbit as antimatter met matter and converted both into pure energy. When the light faded, the harvester ships were simply gone, along with everything within 1,000 kilometers of the blast sites. The alien fleet responded exactly as human military analysts had predicted, with confusion and panic. The Kethrion Collective had never faced an enemy that could strike from beyond sensor range with such devastating power. Their ships began moving erratically, trying to locate the source of the attack. "Second wave launch," Nam ordered. This time it was kinetic impactors, solid metal rods accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. They struck with the force of nuclear weapons but produced no radiation, no heat, no warning. They simply punched through the alien ships like bullets through paper, leaving perfectly circular holes that vented atmosphere and debris into space. 6 more harvester ships died in the second wave. Third wave launch. Nuclear warheads, each one 1,000 times more powerful than the bombs that had ended. World War III. They detonated in precise formation around a cluster of alien vessels, the overlapping explosions creating a zone of superheated plasma that consumed everything within it. In less than 10 minutes, the Earth fleet had destroyed half of the alien armada. The surviving ships were fleeing toward the outer system, abandoning their harvesting operation and the planet they had been stripping bare. "Captain," Sujin reported, "the alien ships are trying to jump to FTL. Should we pursue?" Nam considered this for a moment. The Earth fleet could probably destroy the remaining ships, but that would mean chasing them across the galaxy. Their primary mission was to save the Veltari, not to hunt down every last enemy vessel. Negative, he decided. Let them run. They'll carry word of what happened here back to their leaders. Sir, Zhongsu asked, should I prepare a message for the survivors on the planet? Captain Nam smiled grimly. Already prepared, Zhongsu. Send it on all frequencies in every language our computers can manage. The message was simple, but it carried the weight of humanity's promise to the galaxy. This is Captain Nam Hyun Woo of the United Earthship Retribution. The threat to your world has been eliminated. Earth received your distress call, and Earth has answered. You are under our protection now. Down on the planet's surface, Zafara listened to the message with tears of disbelief streaming down her face. The impossible had happened. The violent species from the Deathworld had crossed 47 light-years of space to save them in orbit. Captain Nam watched the last of the alien ships disappear into FTL. The battle was over. Earth had won its first interstellar war in less than 15 minutes, but he knew this was just the beginning. Somewhere out there, the Kethrian Collective was learning that humanity existed. They were learning that Earth would not tolerate genocide. They were learning to fear the species from the Deathworld. Dr. Kim Tae-ho stood in the communication center of the UES Retribution, his hands shaking slightly as he prepared to send the most important message in human history. Around him, the crew worked quietly at their stations, still processing what they had just witnessed. In less than 20 minutes, 12 human ships had destroyed an alien fleet that had been systematically murdering an entire species, but Captain Nam had been clear about the next phase of their mission. Destroying the Kethrian ships was only the beginning. Now they had to send a message that would be heard across the galaxy. Dr. Kim, Captain Nam said from the bridge, are you ready to make first contact? Tae-ho took a deep breath. Yes, sir. I've prepared the transmission in 17 different mathematical and linguistic formats. If there are any Kethrian survivors in this system, they'll understand it. And the Veltari? Their language patterns are clearer now that we have close-range sensor data. I can communicate with them directly. Good, send both messages simultaneously. Let everyone in this system know exactly where Earth stands. Tae-ho activated the communication array and began broadcasting on all frequencies. The first message was for the Veltari survivors on the planet below. He had worked on it during their journey through FTL space, using the linguistic patterns from their original distress signal. People of Veltar, he said, using the closest approximation he could manage of their species' name. This is Dr. Kim Tae-ho of the planet Earth. We received your call for help. We came as quickly as we could. The ships that were attacking your world have been destroyed or driven away. You are safe now. He paused, knowing that his next words would change everything for both species. We know you do not know us. We know our world is far away. But we want you to understand something important. Earth protects those who cannot protect themselves. No one will hurt you while we are here. Down on the planet's surface, Zafara listened to the transmission with wonder. The alien voice spoke her language with a strange accent, but the meaning was clear. The violent species from the Deathworld had not come to conquer or harvest. They had come to help, but it was the second message that would echo across the galaxy. For years to come, Tae-ho switched to the mathematical and linguistic patterns used by the Kethrian Collective. It had taken him 3 days to decode their communication protocols from the fragments captured during the battle. Now he used that knowledge to speak to them in their own language. This message is for the Kethrian Collective, he began, his voice cold and precise. This is Earth. This is humanity. We are the species you have never heard of, from the star you marked for future harvesting. In the outer reaches of the star system, a single Kethrian scout ship that had escaped the battle received the transmission. Prime Node 12, a lesser intelligence within the collective hierarchy, processed the alien communication with growing alarm. You attacked a species that asked us for help, Tae-ho continued. You murdered innocent people. You attempted to harvest an entire world. This behavior is unacceptable to us. The mathematical precision of the message was what made it truly terrifying. The humans had analyzed Kethrian technology, tactics, and capabilities in real time during the battle. They knew exactly how the collective operated, and they had defeated it anyway. We destroyed your harvesting fleet in 18 minutes and 37 seconds, Tejo said. 53 capital ships and 294 support vessels. Total casualties: 100% of ships that remained to fight, 0 human casualties. Prime Node 12 felt something it had never experienced before: fear. The collective had never encountered a species capable of such overwhelming violence delivered with such surgical precision. We tracked the survivors of your fleet as they fled this system, the message continued. We know the direction they traveled. We know approximately where your nearest bases are located. We are choosing not to pursue them, but this choice can be reconsidered. Captain Nam listened to the transmission from the bridge, a grim smile on his face. They had discussed this approach during the planning phase back on Earth, humanity's first contact with a hostile alien species would establish the rules that Earth expected everyone to follow. Our species has a simple philosophy regarding genocide, Tejo said. We stop it permanently. Anyone who attempts to harvest, exterminate, or systematically murder another intelligent species will face immediate retaliation from Earth. The communication array began receiving responses from across the star system. Some were from Valtari survivors expressing gratitude and disbelief. Others were automated distress beacons from damaged Kethrian ships, calling for rescue that would never come. But the most interesting response came from deep space, a tight beam transmission from the fleeing Kethrian fleet, directed toward their home territory. Prime Node 12 was reporting the battle to the collective's leadership, and the humans were listening to every word. The new species uses faster-than-light kinetic weapons, the alien transmission reported. They're tactical. Doctrine prioritizes complete destruction over territory acquisition. Recommend immediate revision of harvesting operations in this galactic sector. Captain Nam ordered the communication to be intercepted and decoded. Within minutes, they had a partial picture of Kethrian space, dozens of star systems under collective control, millions of harvested worlds, and a hierarchy of artificial intelligences that viewed organic life as nothing more than raw material. Dr. Kim, Nam said, add an addendum to your message. I want the collective to understand exactly what they're dealing with. Tejo nodded and activated the transmitter again. Additional information for the Kethrian collective. We have intercepted your tactical reports. We know the locations of your bases in this sector. We know about your other harvesting operations. He paused, letting the implications sink in. Earth has 47 years of technological development focused on warfare. We have weapons you cannot imagine and the industrial capacity to build them faster than you can count them. More importantly, we have something you do not understand: the moral conviction that genocide must be stopped at any cost. Prime Node 12 processed this information and felt its probability matrices collapse into chaos. The collective had never encountered a species that combined advanced technology with such aggressive protective instincts. You have one standard cycle to cease all harvesting operations in this galactic sector, Tejo continued. Any worlds currently under attack must be abandoned. Any organic populations being processed must be released. This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of Earth's requirements. The transmission was being picked up by more than just the Kethrian survivors. Across the star system, automated monitoring stations and deep space probes were recording the exchange. Within days, word would spread to other species, other civilizations, other potential threats. If you comply with these requirements, Earth will take no further action against the collective in this sector. If you do not comply... Tejo's voice became absolutely cold. Then you will learn what happens when a deathworld species decides that you are a threat to galactic peace. He closed the transmission and looked around the communication center. Every human present understood that they had just declared war on behalf of every innocent species in the galaxy. "Captain," Tejo reported to the bridge, "message sent on all frequencies. Every ship and monitoring station within 50 light-years will have received it within the next few hours." "Good," Nam replied. "Now we wait to see how they respond." Down on the Veltari homeworld, Zafara was organizing rescue operations for the survivors when she received another transmission from the human ship. This one was personal, directed specifically to her as the ranking Veltari commander. "Commander Zafara," came Dr. Kim's voice, "Earth would like to establish formal diplomatic relations with your people. We have much to discuss about the galaxy we now share." She looked up at the stars where human ships maintained their protective formation around her devastated world. For the first time in weeks, she felt hope. The Deathworlders had come to save them, and they were offering friendship. Grand Admiral Vectar of the Realm Empire stared at the holographic display showing the tactical report from the Kethmira system. His 6 arms moved restlessly as he processed what he was seeing. In 47 years of military service, he had never witnessed such overwhelming destruction delivered with such precision. The Realm Empire controlled over 300 star systems across this region of the galaxy. They were one of the most powerful military forces in known space, with fleets that had conquered dozens of lesser civilizations. But the data from Kethmira made Vectar feel very small and very vulnerable. "Play the transmission again," he ordered his intelligence officer. The recording began once more. A human voice speaking perfect Kethrian mathematical language, delivering what could only be described as an ultimatum backed by the complete annihilation of an enemy fleet. Vectar had fought the Kethrian collective before. He knew how powerful their harvesting fleets were. The fact that 12 unknown ships had destroyed 53 collective vessels in less than 20 minutes was impossible to ignore. "Have we located this Earth system yet?" he asked. "Yes, Admiral," replied his navigation officer. "It's a small yellow star approximately 47 light-years from the battle site. Our deep space probes show a single inhabited planet in the 3rd orbital position. And their technological level? That's where the data becomes ... concerning, sir. The planet shows signs of nuclear warfare, but also advanced space construction. They have orbital installations and at least a dozen space-based manufacturing facilities." But Admiral ... the officer paused nervously. "The radio transmissions from their planet are unlike anything we've seen." Vectar activated his personal display and began reviewing the intelligence report. The more he read, the more disturbed he became. Earth appeared to be inhabited by a species that spent most of its time fighting itself. Their entertainment media was filled with stories about war, conflict, and survival against impossible odds. Their news broadcasts discussed weapons capabilities with the casual tone other species used to talk about the weather. "They call themselves humans," the intelligence officer continued. "According to our linguistic analysis, they have over 200 different words for various types of warfare. Their planet appears to be what xenobiologists classify as a Class 12 deathworld." Vectar felt a chill run down his spine. Class 12 worlds were theoretical nightmares, planets so hostile that any species evolving there would be naturally aggressive, adaptable, and extremely dangerous. Most military strategists agreed that contact with a Class 12 species should be avoided at all costs. "Sir," came another voice from across the command center. "We're receiving similar reports from intelligence networks across the sector." The human's message was broadcast on multiple frequencies and has been intercepted by at least 30 different civilizations. The tactical display updated to show the expanding wave of information spreading across local space. Within days, every major power in the region would know about Earth and the events at Kethmira. Within weeks, the news would reach civilizations hundreds of light-years away. "What has been the response from other powers?" Vectar asked. "Mixed, sir. The Zephyrian Republic has issued a statement calling for peaceful contact with the humans. The hegemony of suns is mobilizing their border fleets, apparently viewing Earth as a potential threat. The collective ... The officer paused. The collective has gone silent. All harvesting operations in this sector have ceased. Vectar was not surprised. The Kethrian collective was a machine intelligence that calculated odds and probabilities with perfect precision. If they had stopped their operations, it meant their calculations showed that continuing would result in their complete destruction. "Admiral," another officer called out, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Veltari system. It's from the humans." The command center fell silent. Every eye turned to Vectar as he considered his options. The Realan Empire had been at war with smaller civilizations for decades, expanding their territory through conquest and intimidation. Now they were being contacted by a species that had just demonstrated the ability to destroy entire fleets without suffering a single casualty. "Put it through," he ordered. The holographic display shimmered and resolved into the image of a human face. Vectar had seen pictures of humans before, but seeing one in real time was different. The creature looked deceptively fragile, with soft skin and small teeth, but its eyes held a cold intelligence that made Vectar's combat instincts scream. "Warnings. This is Admiral Leah Yoon of the United Earth Defense Force," the human said. "I am speaking to the leadership of the Realan Empire." Vectar stepped forward. "I am Grand Admiral Vectar. I command the Imperial Fleet." "Admiral Vectar," the human continued, "Earth is aware of your Empire's expansion activities in this sector. We know about your recent conquest of the Methys system and your ongoing campaign against the Dorothan Union." The directness of the statement caught Vectar off guard. Most civilizations began diplomatic contact with elaborate protocols and formal greetings. The humans seemed to prefer cutting straight to the point. "What is your interest in our military operations?" he asked carefully. "Earth's interest is simple," Admiral Lee replied. "We do not tolerate genocide or the systematic oppression of peaceful civilizations. Your Empire's actions in the Methys system resulted in the deaths of over 2 billion civilians. This is unacceptable." Vectar felt his temper rising. The Realan Empire had been conquering star systems when humans were still discovering fire. They would not be lectured by some primitive species from the edge of known space. "The Realan Empire has been expanding for over 1,000 years, he said coldly. "We will not be dictated to by newcomers who know nothing about galactic politics." Admiral Lee's expression did not change. "Admiral, I think you misunderstand our position. This is not a negotiation. This is a notification. Earth has decided that your Empire's aggressive expansion ends now. And if we refuse, then you will join the Kethrian collective in learning what happens when someone threatens innocent people in our neighborhood." The transmission ended, leaving Vectar staring at an empty holographic display. Around him, his officers waited nervously for orders. The Grand Admiral of the Realan Empire had just been given an ultimatum by a species he had never heard of a week ago. "Sir?" asked his second-in-command. "Your orders?" Vectar thought about the tactical report from Kethmira. 53 ships destroyed in 18 minutes, 0 human casualties. Weapons that could strike from beyond sensor range with the power of small stars. "Cancel all offensive operations," he said quietly. "Recall our fleets to defensive positions around our core worlds." "Sir? But the Dorothan campaign is nearly complete. We could finish conquering their remaining systems within the month." Vectar looked at his subordinate with tired eyes. "Commander, we are no longer the apex predators in this region of space. There is a new power, and they have weapons we cannot match and a moral code we cannot understand. We will adapt to this new reality, or we will be destroyed like the collective fleet." Across the galaxy, similar conversations were taking place in the command centers of dozens of civilizations. The hegemony of suns was recalling their slave-raiding fleets. The Vrex Confederation was abandoning their plans to harvest the crystal forests of the Singing Worlds. The Predator clans were withdrawing from the systems they had been terrorizing. For decades, within a month of the Battle of Kethmera, Aggressive military operations across an entire galactic sector had ground to a halt. Not because of treaties or diplomatic agreements, but because a single species had demonstrated the ability and willingness to enforce peace through overwhelming violence. Earth had become the galaxy's police force, whether they wanted the job or not. Dr. Kim Tae-ho stood on the observation deck of Earth's newest space station, watching ships from 17 different species dock at the massive orbital facility. 5 years had passed since the Battle of Kethmira, and the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The space station, called Harmony Station by the humans and various other names by the alien visitors, had become the unofficial capital of what the galactic community now called the Terran Protection Zone. Through the transparent aluminum windows, Tae-ho could see a Veltari science vessel docking next to a Rialan diplomatic ship. Beyond them, a squadron of human patrol craft moved in formation with vessels from the Zephyrian Republic. It was a sight that would have been impossible to imagine just a few years ago. "Dr. Kim," came a voice behind him. He turned to see Ambassador Zephyra approaching, her blue-scaled skin shimmering under the station's artificial lighting. The former Veltari military commander had become Earth's closest alien ally and now served as the head of the Interspecies Council. "Ambassador," Tae-ho replied with a slight bow. Over the years, he had learned the proper greeting customs for dozens of different species. "How did the morning session go?" "Better than expected," she said, moving to stand beside him at the window. "The hegemony of suns has agreed to release the remaining slave populations from the Outer Rim colonies. The Vrex Confederation is withdrawing their mining operations from the Singing Worlds, and the Rialan Empire has formally apologized to the survivors of the Methus system." Tae-ho nodded, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and exhaustion. His official title was now Chief Xenodiplomat for the United Earth Government, but his real job was much simpler. He was the person who explained to aggressive alien civilizations why they needed to stop being aggressive. "It was not always an easy conversation. Any resistance?" he asked. "Some," Zephyra admitted. "The Predator clans are still refusing to acknowledge Earth's authority. They claim that humans have no right to interfere with their traditional hunting practices." Tae-ho sighed. The Predator clans were exactly what their name suggested, a collection of warrior species that viewed weaker civilizations as prey. They had been terrorizing the outer systems for centuries, raiding colonies and enslaving entire populations. Earth's demand that they stop had been met with mockery and threats. "What did you tell them?" Tae-ho asked. "I reminded them what happened to the last group that refused to listen to Earth's warnings," Zephyra replied with a slight smile. 6 months after Kethmira, a raider fleet calling itself the Bloodstars Consortium had attacked a peaceful colony world, apparently believing that Earth's protection only extended to the species they had already made contact with. Admiral Lee De-yoon had corrected this misunderstanding by arriving in the system with a human battle group and systematically destroying every raider ship they could find. The message had been clear. Earth's protection extended to everyone, not just their allies. "Dr. Kim," came another voice. President Choi Min-ho approached them, flanked by his security detail. Even on a diplomatic station, the President of Earth never traveled without protection. The galaxy had become much more peaceful in recent years, but there were still species that viewed humanity as a threat to their way of life. "Mr. President," Tae-ho said, "how are the negotiations with the Outer Rim territories?" "Productive," President Choi replied. 43 systems have requested to join the Protection Compact. They're offering to share technology and resources in exchange for Earth's guarantee of safety. The Terran Protection Compact had grown far beyond what anyone had originally envisioned. What had started as Earth's response to a single distress call had evolved into a galactic alliance based on a simple principle: peaceful civilizations would be protected. Aggressive ones would be stopped. "Any word from Admiral Lee's task force?" Tae-ho asked. "They're still hunting down the last Kethrian holdouts in the Darkness sector," President Choi said. "The collective made the mistake of trying to resume harvesting operations near the Centauri cluster. Lee is making sure they understand that Earth's ultimatum was permanent." Through the window, Tejo watched a new ship approach the station. It was unlike anything he had seen before, sleek and silver with graceful curves that suggested advanced technology. The ship's design was beautiful, but there was something about it that made him nervous. "Unknown vessel," Zafara said, checking her wrist communicator. "They're requesting permission to dock?" They claim to be representatives of something called the Deep Core Alliance. President Choi frowned. "I've never heard of them, Dr. Kim?" Tejo searched his memory. He had spent the past 5 years cataloging every known civilization in the local galactic region, but the Deep Core Alliance was new to him, no record of them in our databases. But if they're from the Deep Core, they've traveled a very long way to get here. The Deep Core was the central region of the galaxy, thousands of light years from Earth. It was rumored to be home to ancient civilizations with technology far beyond anything in the outer regions. Most species in the local area had never made contact with Deep Core powers. Should we grant them docking permission? Zephyr asked. President Choi considered this for a moment. Yes, but with full security protocols. If they've come all this way to meet us, we should at least hear what they have to say. An hour later, Tejo found himself in the station's main conference room, facing 3 beings unlike any he had ever encountered. They were tall and slender, with skin that seemed to shift color depending on the angle of view. Their eyes were large and completely black, giving them an unsettling appearance. "I am Kethmiran Vel Thanos," the lead being said, speaking perfect human English. "I represent the Deep Core Alliance, a confederation of the galaxy's oldest civilizations." "Welcome to Harmony Station," President Choi replied formally. "I'm President Choi Minho of Earth. This is Dr. Kim Tae-ho, our chief Xena diplomat, and Ambassador Zafara of the Veltari." "We know who you are," Velthano said. "News of your activities has reached the Deep Core, the destruction of the Kethrion harvesting fleets, the pacification of the Rialan Empire, the establishment of your protection compact. You have accomplished in 5 years what we have been trying to do for 5,000. Tejo felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean?" "The Deep Core Alliance has been attempting to bring peace to the galaxy for millennia," Velthanos explained. "We have tried diplomacy, economic incentives, technological superiority. Nothing worked. The younger species in the outer regions seemed determined to destroy each other through endless warfare. And now?" President Choi asked. "Now there is peace in an entire galactic sector, enforced by a species that most of our databases classified as primitive and dangerous. We have come to understand how you accomplished this miracle." Zafara leaned forward. "What have you concluded?" Velthanos' expression was difficult to read, but Tejo thought he detected something like admiration. "You succeeded because you were willing to do what we were not. When faced with genocide, you responded with overwhelming violence. When confronted with aggression, you eliminated the aggressors. You brought peace not through negotiation but through fear. We prefer to call it decisive action," President Choi said carefully. "Call it what you will," Velthanos replied. "The result is the same. For the first time in galactic history, there is a region of space where peaceful civilizations can exist without fear of conquest, slavery, or extinction." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried a weight that suggested the importance of his next words. "The Deep Core Alliance has a proposal for Earth. We wish to expand your protection compact to include the entire galaxy." The room fell silent. Tejo felt the magnitude of what was being suggested. Earth, which had only learned of alien life 5 years ago, was being asked to become the police force for the entire galaxy. "That's—" Tejo began, then stopped. He realized he had no idea how to respond to such a proposal. "That's a big responsibility." President Choi said finally. "Yes," Velthanos agreed. "But based on what we have observed, humanity is the only species capable of handling it. You have the military power to enforce peace and the moral conviction to use that power responsibly." Through the conference room's windows, Tejo could see the ships of 17 different species, all existing peacefully in the same space because Earth had made it clear that aggression would not be tolerated. He thought about the Veltari children who were now growing up on a world free from the threat of harvest machines. He thought about the former slave colonies that were rebuilding. Their civilizations under Earth's protection, maybe the galaxy needed guardians. Maybe humanity, despite all their flaws and violent tendencies, was the right species for the job. "We'll consider your proposal," President Choi said. "But first, we need to know more about these threats you mentioned from deeper space." Velthanos nodded gravely. "There are things in the darkness between galaxies that make the Kethrion Collective look like children playing with toys. If they ever turn their attention toward our galaxy, we will need every peaceful species united under the protection of the Deathworld warriors." As the meeting continued, Tejo looked out at the stars and wondered what other challenges awaited humanity among the infinite darkness of space. But for now, there